Ambassador Velthor of the Galactic Confederation had seen many strange things in his 4 centuries of diplomatic service. He had negotiated with hive minds that spoke in mathematical equations, mediated disputes between silicon-based lifeforms and energy beings, and once prevented a war over a mistranslated recipe for fermented algae. But nothing in his vast experience had prepared him for the day he requested a human bodyguard. The request itself was born of desperation. The peace talks on Station Kepler 442 were falling apart. The Vordani Empire and the Kreeth Dominion had been at war for 17 years, and both sides were finally exhausted enough to consider negotiation. But the Vordani war leader, General Thaxmul, had made his position clear. He would only attend if the Confederation could guarantee his safety in a way that even the Kreeth would respect. "Send me someone," Thaxmul had growled over the communication link, his 3 eyes blazing with barely contained fury, "who makes the Kreeth wet themselves in fear. Send me a warrior so terrifying that even thinking about betrayal would be suicide." Velthor had consulted the Confederation's military database for 3 days straight. The Kreeth were apex predators from a high-gravity world, standing nearly 3 meters tall with exoskeletons that could deflect plasma fire. They had conquered 14 systems before the Vordani had finally stopped their expansion. What could possibly intimidate such creatures? The answer, when it came, was absurd. A human. Velthor had stared at his aide, a efficient Paloxian named Kree, as if she had grown a second head. Humans are from a death world, yes, but they're not particularly large or strong by galactic standards. They don't even have natural armor. Kree's translucent skin rippled with what Velthor had learned to recognize as amusement. "Ambassador, with respect, you haven't read the after-action reports from the border wars. The Kreeth fought humans once. Only once." The file she sent him made his blood run cold. 3 days later, Sergeant James Mitchell of the United Earth Defense Force stepped off a transport at Station Kepler 442. He was, by galactic standards, disappointingly average. Just under 2 meters tall, medium build, with the kind of face that would disappear in any crowd. He wore a simple black uniform with no visible weapons. Sergeant Mitchell reporting as requested, "Sir," he said, his voice calm and professional. Velthor studied him with growing concern. "Sergeant, I must confess some doubt about this arrangement. The Kreeth are. I've read the brief, Ambassador." Mitchell's gray eyes were steady. "The Kreeth Dominion. High-gravity predators. Enhanced strength, natural armor, aggressive territorial behavior. They tried to expand into the Tau Ceti sector 15 years ago." "Yes, and they nearly succeeded until," Velthor paused. "You were there." 3rd Battalion, Titan Regiment. Mitchell said it like he was commenting on the weather. "We convinced them to reconsider their expansion plans. The peace talks were scheduled to begin in 6 hours. Velthor spent most of that time reviewing the security arrangements and trying not to panic. The Kreeth delegation arrived first, led by War Matron Clixera, whose scarred exoskeleton told the story of 100 battles. She swept into the conference chamber with her honor guard of 12 warriors, each one a mass of muscle and chitin that made the station's floors groan under their weight. Then General Thaxmul arrived with his Vordani escorts, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. The Vordani were smaller than the Kreeth, but no less dangerous, lithoid beings with a cultural obsession with honor and an unfortunate tendency toward explosive rage. Mitchell stood behind Velthor's chair, hands clasped behind his back, face expressionless. Clixera saw him immediately. Her 4 compound eyes fixed on the human, and every warrior in her honor guard tensed. The air suddenly smelled of the pheromones that Kreeth released before combat. "You," she clicked in galactic standard, her translator struggling with the harmonics of rage in her voice. "You brought a human." The room went silent. Even Thaxmul, who had been radiating hostility toward the Kreeth, turned to look at Mitchell with what might have been respect, or possibly fear. "Ambassador Velthor," Clixera continued, her voice deadly quiet, "this is an insult beyond measure. You know what humans are. You know what they did. Mitchell still hadn't moved. He stood like a statue, but Velthor noticed something: every Kreeth warrior had taken a half-step back. "War Matron," Velthor said carefully, "Sergeant Mitchell is here solely to ensure General Thaxmol's safety and I know what he's here to ensure." Click. Sarah's screech made the translator squeal with feedback. "He's here to remind us. To remind us what happens when we—" She stopped, her mandibles clicking in what Velthor recognized as distress. One of her warriors, younger than the others, made a move toward his weapon. Mitchell moved. It wasn't fast by Kreeth standards. It wasn't fast by Vordani standards. But in the space between one heartbeat and the next, Mitchell had crossed 3 meters, disarmed the Kreeth warrior with a twist that should have been impossible given the size difference, and had the warrior on the ground with the warrior's own blade at his throat. "Don't," Mitchell said quietly. The entire Kreeth honor guard raised their weapons. Mitchell didn't let go. "I said don't." There was something in his voice, something that bypassed language and reason and spoke directly to the primitive hindbrain that every sentient species possessed. It was the voice of a predator that had evolved on a world where everything wanted to kill you, where survival meant outthinking, outrunning, and outlasting every other creature on the planet. It was the voice of a species that had climbed to the top of the food chain on a death world not through strength or armor, but through sheer, bloody-minded persistence. The Kreeth lowered their weapons. Mitchell released the young warrior and handed back the blade, then returned to his position behind Velthor's chair as if nothing had happened. The entire exchange had taken less than 3 minutes. Sarah stared at him for a long moment. Then she turned to Thaxmol. "The human stays. We will negotiate in good faith. We will sign the treaty. And we will leave this station peacefully." Thaxmol's rumbling laugh filled the chamber. "Wise decision, War Matron. Very wise." The treaty was signed 4 hours later. It would bring peace to both empires and save an estimated 4 billion lives. As Mitchell escorted Velthor back to his quarters, the ambassador finally found his voice. "What did they do? The Kreeth, I mean. What happened at Tau Ceti?" Mitchell was quiet for a moment. "They learned the same lesson every species eventually learns about humans, Ambassador. We're not the strongest. We're not the fastest. We don't have claws or armor or enhanced senses." He paused at the door. "But we're the ones who decided that good enough wasn't good enough. We're the ones who looked at a universe full of things that could kill us and said, not today. We're persistence predators, sir. We don't stop. We don't give up. And we don't forget. And that's enough to end a war." Mitchell smiled, and it didn't reach his eyes. "Sometimes, Ambassador, the threat of what we could do is more terrifying than what we've already done. The Kreeth know that if this war continued, if they pushed hard enough, humanity would get involved. And they remember what happened the last time someone gave us a reason to fight." Velthor thought about that long after Mitchell had left. In the end, he decided he didn't need to know the details. Some warnings were best left unspoken. The war ended not with a bang, but with a quiet reminder: humans were watching. And that was enough.